The hall smelled of roses and frosting, pink balloons bouncing gently near the ceiling while laughter filled every corner. I had arrived early, carrying the gifts I had saved up for. Tiny sweaters I had knitted by hand and a small silver rattle I had polished until it gleamed. I thought maybe, just maybe, my daughter would smile at me like she used to when she was little and would crawl into my lap asking for bedtime stories. But the moment I walked in, she didn't even look at my face. She wrinkled her nose at my shoes, at my old dress, then clapped her hands dramatically. "Oh, perfect timing," she said, loudly enough for every woman at her table to hear. "Someone spilled juice near the cake. Mom here?" She shoved a mop into my hands as though I were a hired maid. "Clean the floor. That's all you're good for. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." The room erupted with laughter, a ripple of mocking giggles. I felt every eye stab into me like I was an intruder in a place I thought was my family. Even my own sister leaned across the table and whispered, not even bothering to lower her voice. "Honestly, at least she gave you something useful to do." My daughter's friends smirked, raising their champagne flutes. "The family mascot finally has a job," one muttered. And my daughter, my own flesh and blood, smiled proudly, as if humiliating me was some kind of achievement she had waited for her entire life. My throat closed, my hands trembled, but I didn't argue. I didn't drop the mop. I didn't scream or cry. I bent down on my knees, my old bones aching against the polished floor as the laughter echoed around me. I dipped the mop into the bucket, pressing it against the sticky spot where juice had pooled, hearing the whispers. Pathetic. So embarrassing. How is she even related? As though they were background music meant to decorate the celebration, the music playing from the speakers drowned beneath the cruelty of their voices. And my daughter? She waved her hand like a queen dismissing her servant and turned back to open another pile of glossy, expensive gifts. I stayed there, scrubbing slowly, quietly, pretending not to notice when someone snapped a picture on their phone. I imagined the photo floating through their group chats later that night, captioned with something vile. My heart squeezed so tightly it almost broke through my chest, but I refused to let them see me crack. My silence, my stillness, became my shield. They thought I was defeated. They thought I had accepted my place. But in that silence, something hardened in me. I remembered the years I had worked double shifts just to buy her school supplies, the nights I skipped meals so she could eat. I remembered pawning my wedding ring to cover her rent when she was pregnant and alone. And now she looked at me as less than human, a prop to be paraded for her guests' entertainment. My daughter had turned into a stranger, and strangers could not break me anymore. When the floor was spotless and my hands stung from the harsh detergent, I stood slowly, wiped my palms on my dress, and placed the mop neatly against the wall. I caught her eyes just for a moment. She looked at me like I was invisible, like I had fulfilled my tiny purpose and was ready to fade into the background. I smiled, an expression so small, so unreadable that she didn't recognize it. Because what I felt wasn't sadness anymore. It was a fire she couldn't see yet. I sat down at the very back of the hall, clutching the small rattle in my lap, my back straight, my face calm. They thought they had humiliated me into silence, but what they didn't know was that every smirk, every laugh, every cruel word that afternoon was carving something permanent inside me. Something that would reshape the story of who belonged in my life and who didn't. And as she blew out candles shaped like little pink booties, her hand resting proudly on her belly, I whispered to myself, "Enjoy it now, child. Enjoy every last moment." Because though she had given me a mop, I had something far sharper hidden away, the power to decide exactly what she would never see coming. The music was louder now, the gifts piled higher on the decorated table, and my daughter basked in the attention of every guest who clapped at her jokes and nodded at her arrogance. I stayed at the back, invisible, my hands folded neatly on my lap. She looked so much like me once. The same eyes, the same smile, but I couldn't recognize the heart behind it anymore. Every time her gaze flicked in my direction, it wasn't with love. It was with disdain. "Don't forget the plates, Mom," she called out suddenly, her voice cutting through the music. "Or are you waiting for me to spell it out? Plastic ones are fine for you." The crowd chuckled again, and my stomach tightened. I rose quietly, fetched the stack of plates from the counter, and began placing them on the table one by one. She leaned toward her friend. "See? Trained. Like a puppy." Her friend laughed so hard she snorted champagne out of her nose. I wanted to scream, but instead I smiled faintly and walked back. They thought obedience was weakness. They mistook silence for surrender. But every insult was a brick on the wall I was building in my mind, one that would keep them from everything they believed they were entitled to. Later, when the cake was cut, she pressed a small slice into my hand as though she were feeding a beggar. "Don't eat too much," she sneered. "Wouldn't want you to forget your place." My own sister clapped her on the back, saying, "You're hilarious, Jessica. She should be grateful to even be here." I sat with the cake untouched, listening to the laughter rattle around me, each word carving itself deeper into my chest. But then came the moment that etched itself permanently into my mind. A woman from her husband's family asked if I was excited to be a grandmother. Before I could answer, Jessica cut in sharply. "Excited? She's lucky I even invited her. Honestly, we bring her around so people think we're charitable. She's our family project." The laughter this time was crueler, sharper, like knives scraping across porcelain. And I, her mother, the woman who once held her when she was nothing but a fragile breath of life, was reduced to a charity case in front of strangers. I looked at her then. Really looked. The smug curve of her lips, the tilt of her chin, the way she leaned into her new family's approval like it was oxygen. I saw no trace of the little girl who once whispered to me in the dark, "Promise you'll never leave me, Mom." That child had disappeared, buried under layers of vanity, selfishness, and cruelty, and for the first time in my life I did not feel like her mother. I felt like her victim. But victims can choose when to stop bleeding. Victims can choose when to stand up, even if quietly. And that was the choice I made as I set the cake down, brushed the crumbs from my skirt, and walked slowly to the exit. Nobody noticed at first, too, wrapped up in their glitter and gossip. But as I pushed the door open, I caught Jessica's voice behind me. "She'll come crawling back. She always does." She was wrong. Because that night, while they toasted to a future they thought included me, I opened the locked drawer in my room. I pulled out the thick, carefully sealed envelope, the one that held the truth of who would inherit everything I had worked for all my life. For years, my plan had been simple. She was my only daughter. She would get it all. But cruelty has a way of rewriting legacies. And as I laid that envelope flat on the table, pen in hand, I began writing her out of my life line by line. She thought I was cleaning her floor. She had no idea I was cleaning her out of my will. When Sunday evening came, Jessica's baby shower was the talk of her neighborhood. Photos littered social media, her in her pastel dress, glowing with pride, surrounded by gifts stacked high like small monuments to her vanity. Her friends posted captions like, "Queen Jessica deserves it all," while I sat alone in my quiet house, sipping lukewarm tea and watching the comments roll in. They didn't see the mop in my hands. They didn't hear the words that had been thrown at me. They didn't know that every fake smile I gave that day was my last. The phone rang late that night. It was Jessica. Her voice was sharp, commanding. "Mom, I need you to come over. The place is a mess. Bring your cleaning gloves." Not please, not can you. A command, as if I were staff. My lips curved in the faintest smile as I answered softly, "I'm busy." She gasped, offended. "Busy? Doing what?" I didn't reply. I let silence answer for me. She didn't realize it yet, but the days of me bending were over. The weeks that followed brought the storm I had been waiting for. Jessica's perfect life began to crumble. Not from my hand, but from her own greed. Her husband's business took a sudden blow. Investments gone wrong, partners pulling out, money that once dripped from her fingers like honey now dried up overnight. She called me in tears, voice shaking. "Mom, we need help. We need a loan, just until things get better." I listened. I let her spill every desperate detail. Then, I whispered back the words she once spat at me. "Clean the floor, that's all you're good for." And I hung up. She didn't stop there. She came pounding at my door days later, her makeup streaked, her belly heavy with the child she once flaunted as her golden ticket. "Please, Mom, please, we're drowning. You have savings, I know you do. You can help us." Behind her, I saw the man who had once smirked at me during the shower, now too proud to look me in the eye. I leaned against the doorway, letting her words fall to the floor like broken glass. "Jessica," I said quietly, "you made it clear I was only a charity case, but charity doesn't fund arrogance. Charity doesn't fix cruelty." Her tears turned to rage. "You'll regret this. I'm your daughter." But she had forgotten something daughters inherit, not just blood, but the weight of choices. When the will was finally read months later, after all her begging, after all her attempts to worm her way back into my favor, she sat in the lawyer's office smugly, certain the fortune was hers. The envelope was opened, my handwriting across the pages like steady iron. Every asset, every piece of land, every drop of sweat I had worked for was written over to charities of my choice, to families who had treated me with more respect than my own blood. Jessica's name appeared only once, struck through, erased. Her face drained of color, her hands trembled as the lawyer's words echoed in the sterile room. "She left you nothing. Nothing." The girl who once shoved a mop into my hands and laughed now sat in silence, her world collapsing. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to, because the quietest revenge is the kind that doesn't shout. It simply leaves absence where entitlement once lived. And as she stared at me with eyes wide and wet, I stood, picked up my coat, and walked out. The floor was hers to clean now. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.